Tragedy is the mirror of human conscience. Tragedy is a great art that naturally exists. It evokes emotions deep within the human heart. It triggers reflection on our own actions. At the same time, tragedy allows us to re-examine ourselves, to rediscover human nature, just like Socrates over 2,000 years ago, who died for the truth. In the region of Gaul in France, there once was a philosopher of legendary status, known as the Socrates of Gaul. He is the founder of the University of Paris, the most talented scholastic philosopher of the Middle Ages. Abelard. According to his autobiography, Story of My Misfortunes, he was born into a noble family in France. In his youth, he once gave up his inheritance of knighthood to participate in dialectical contests, gave up the right to the title of knight, in pursuit of higher academic ideals. Abelard subsequently followed several renowned theologians. Philosophers engage in learning, but eventually, due to differences in views, they parted ways with their teachers. In the year 1115, Abelard at the Cathedral School of Notre Dame in Paris served as a theology professor, with a bold and open teaching style, in a church atmosphere of equal debate, which made Abelard widely admired by his students. Leading to the tradition of debate he advocated, gradually becoming the academic tradition of European universities, he once proposed to emulate Aristotle's practice of using conceptual symbols to represent logical propositions. He was also the first in the 12th century to adopt the philosopher of conceptual language theory, which was a very avant-garde idea at the time, and it was this pioneering figure, a renowned scholar who broadened academic horizons, yet had a scandalous love affair with one of his female students. A world-famous illicit love affair took place with the Eloise of that time, just a 17-year-old unmarried noble girl. On the other hand, Abelard is a well-known professor and clergyman. When the two secretly married and had a son, their relationship was forced to be made public. And according to the church rules at the time, the dean of the theological college had to remain single for life, dedicating themselves entirely to God. Eloise, out of concern for her husband's future, then denied the marriage publicly. Eloise's uncle believed that Abelard had deceived his niece's feelings, so he sent a few servants to attack Abelard at night and subjected him to torture. This made it impossible for Abelard to maintain a normal family. After surviving the ordeal, Abelard persuaded Eloise to go to the monastery outside Paris, become a nun. He himself chose to go to the Abbey of Saint Denis and became a monk. From then on, the two never met again, but they maintained a correspondence. Many years later, Abelard once confessed to Eloise in a letter why he had advised her to become a nun. Out of fear that other men would possess her, Eloise also submitted to the fate, until Abelard returned to Paris in 1136. He wrote the ethical work, Know Yourself, along with a series of bold works before thoroughly angering the second founder of the Cistercian order, Saint Bernard. Saint Bernard specifically wrote down Abelard's charges, listing 19 heretical statements in all his works. And at the Council of Sens convened in 1140, condemned his actions. Among these, some of the condemnations were indeed very provocative. For example, Abelard once believed that even God cannot prevent evil from happening. The abilities that make people steadfast were given to God's apostles, but were not given to their successors. This directly led to Abelard's theological treatise being ordered to be burned, and burned by Calin. Abelard, not accepting the judgment, prepared to appeal to Rome. However, on the way, Pope Innocent II had already approved Saint Bernard's report, declaring Abelard's teachings as heretical. In the last years of his life, Abelard wrote the dialogue of a philosopher, a Jew, and a Christian, between a philosopher, a Jew, and a Christian. Eventually, Abelard passed away in the Abbey of Cluny. The Abbey's abbot Peter documented this process and sent the letters to Abelard's wife Heloise. Until the 19th century, with the collection of correspondence between Abelard and Heloise, it caused a strong social reaction after being published. In 1877, their remains were moved to Paris. Buried together in Père Lachaise Cemetery, Abelard and Heloise, a legendary tragic love story. It was remade into a Hollywood film in 1988, Stealing Heaven, and in the early 90s. First introduced to China, Abelard was never accepted by the church throughout his life. His tritheism theory was condemned as heretical. His first work, Theologia Summi Boni, was also ordered to be burned, along with Abelard's advocacy for radical openness. His naturally argumentative personality also led him to criticize many famous scholars of the time. Among them was the teacher he once followed. Even though Abelard was admired by many students, its influence has also spread to many university professors during the Renaissance period. But in the academic circles of the time, Abelard was an extremely unpopular figure. Although the Middle Ages were not as dark and ignorant as claimed, it is widely accepted in academic circles, but it cannot be denied that Christian theology held a long-standing dominant position in medieval Western society, still maintaining a long-term dominance. The authority of the church had strict control over any learning or knowledge, with rigorous regulatory mechanisms. The church also had exclusive rights to interpret the Bible. all knowledge, had to serve the immensely glorious and correct theology. Even philosophy had to become the handmaiden of theology. Any views contradicting its doctrines were labeled as heretical, were branded as heretical. LMEXAVLAMAGD. Countless intellectuals have suffered from this cultural tyranny and oppression. In the creation of art and culture, they also need to control vigorously. Themes that praise God became the main theme of medieval art, and easily, secular art creations that are empathetically understood by people are not valued, also have to undergo strict scrutiny by the church to ensure they do not violate the core values of the church. The influence of the church on the people has already permeated all aspects of society. Despite the oppression of cultural authoritarianism, there are also many exceptions and resistance. In some academic centers, many liberal ideas have emerged, such as the University of Paris where Abelard once taught, universities like Oxford and Cambridge in England. At that historical stage, because these intellectuals often put forward some viewpoints that contradict mainstream societal beliefs, they then face political, religious, and cultural persecution and attacks from public opinion. However, academic freedom and development in Europe are built upon this kind of resistance and tragedy. In a sense, appreciating tragedy is appreciating human conscience. Tragic works often involve human suffering, moral dilemmas, and profound reflections on reality. Tragic works also most easily embody human dignity and courage. A society with conscience often can generate moral resonance in tragedy, whereas a society in moral decline inevitably moves towards the opposite of empathy. They may be obsessed with those mainstream works that they have to applaud, or indulge in those vulgar, fast-paced works. In conclusion, tragedy is no longer appreciated by people, and society no longer produces tragedy, because people no longer care about others' pain and struggles, and no longer believe in dignity and courage. Follow me to take a popular look at philosophy. Friends, see you next time.